Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of 10 Minute Tuesdays, where we take on career development in 10 minutes or less at a time. Today's topic is tips and tricks for virtual interviews. I'm Heather Rickrell with Career Services at University of Wisconsin-Superior. So as it says here, there's a lot more to it than logging onto Zoom. And we've all been functioning in the virtual world here for a good year now, or coming up on a year. It's really seriously our virtual reality, and there's a lot of fun things going on. You've probably seen the progressive commercials and all of the things that can go wrong. This is said in humor, but it is really something we're all experiencing. So a little bit of levity there never hurts. The most important thing is that you test ahead of time. So testing your technology in a realistic way. You could test with career services, a friend or family member, an advisor, a professor, and you're just really checking, like, can you get connected easily? Do you know how to use all of the basic controls? Mute, video on and off, screen share, potentially chat, those sorts of things. Make sure your volume is loud and clear. Is it better if you use headphones? More often than not, yes, it will be. Is your connection strong? The big tip there is go ahead and just plug right directly into the internet if you can. Otherwise, make sure your Wi-Fi signal is very strong. Having a backup plan. So what are you going to do if you encounter an issue with your technology? Do you have the name, email, phone number of somebody at that company or that organization you can contact? You'd want that person to get your message immediately and then be able to convey that message to the folks doing the interviewing. So a lot of times using the person who's sort of the admin that maybe helped you set up your interview time, those sorts of things. And I would also just be really clear, if there's not an admin person and you're working, directly with the interviewer, that might be, a manager, whatever, just let them know I will contact you if something is happening on my end. They like to know that you're being proactive. And then if worse comes to worse, you just might have to have an old-fashioned phone call. That still works too, and it's not terrible, but it's better to have that plan than to not. The optics, how things look, right? They're seeing you on screen, and they're going to be paying attention to what are you wearing? Is that the impression you intended to make? So, for instance, I'm in a hoodie right now. Don't ever show up to an interview in a hoodie, right? So, you want to make sure that you're in something that would be appropriate for your field. And you might need to ask questions about what that is, and we can help you with that in career services. You also need to consider what is in your background. You might need to consider a virtual background within the app. So I'm using a UWS app or background within the Zoom app. And I do that, one, because it's branded in the corner here. But two, it just sort of lets people know what campus is like, right? Um, some people have things in their background that they don't necessarily want to show, or that could be distracting, or they might have people moving in the background. Just make sure that everything is appropriate, neat, not distracting, and that you don't have critters or people moving through. As far as the sound, you want to make sure that everything is quiet, but you want to make sure that your voice is clear and that you can hear the people doing the interviewing. You want to pay attention to your attention. So, what has your attention? Silence. We all have, phones and things next to us. Silence your phone, close all other tabs and apps in your computer so those notifying dings and blips aren't going off. Focus on the interview. You might have a resume or something next to you. That's totally fine. Or you might be taking notes or have notes with you. That's okay. It's the other distractions we need to cut out. Pay attention to your webcam angle. You want it at eye level or slightly above so that people aren't, looking up your nose or looking down at the top of your head. Make sure you're not trying to balance your laptop on your knees or on the edge of a couch or something, because they can see the movement of that if the laptop isn't still or the phone isn't still. Pay attention to your chair. Now, I'm in a swivel chair, right? But if I swivel while I'm interviewing, that can get pretty distracting. So lock it into place, use a stationary chair, or make sure that you can stay still. You still have to practice and prepare. This is no less important than if you were meeting face to face. So make sure you've researched the company and the position ahead of time. Make sure you've practiced. You can use Standout. That's on the UWS campus logins page. That is a mock video interview platform. You can search question banks. You can use question banks from Standout or those provided by Career Services on the website. So practice those questions. You still need to nail the pacing piece of it. So managing your time, making sure you're not rambling, but that you're still answering the questions. And you should make sure that you have questions ready for when they ask you, what questions do you have for us? That is a critical time for you to learn more about the company. You have to be okay with audio and video lag. It's gonna happen, okay? And just wait it out. It's okay. Asking for a question to be repeated, that's also okay. You might have just a little bit of a blip in the audio. That might be enough of a blip where you're not sure what was said. Ask to repeat the question. It's okay. You might need to ask them to increase their volume. Also, perfectly fine. Be okay with silence. It takes time for them and you to mute and unmute, to switch between questions in the virtual interview platform. They might be taking notes. You might need a second or two to sort of formulate your answers so you're not rambling. All okay. You also need to be okay with not being able to see all of their body language, okay? Just like they can't see all of yours. So that makes it a little more challenging to build rapport and maybe assess the connection you're building in that virtual interview. But I do encourage you to be yourself. And after any interview, you want to make sure that you thank them. Doesn't matter if it's phone, virtually, or in person. I would encourage you to send an email within 24 hours of your interview. Try not to send out an email to the entire hiring committee. Try to do it individually. Share something unique to that person. Maybe it was a question they asked or something you caught when they introduced themselves. Just know they might not respond to your email. That's totally okay. It's fine. The point is that you did it, right? Handwritten notes are still very much appreciated, but pay attention to the fact that when most people are working from home these days, it might not be super practical. So for instance, you might be sending that thank you note to their work location, but they won't be at work. And so it could take weeks or months for the note to get to them. That's just a consideration. And if you have any questions after the interview, sometimes they'll say, hey, if anything pops up, go ahead and contact me. Feel free to do that. If a question pops up, it shows your interest, it shows your initiative, and it shows that you're willing to have an additional conversation. All good things. I also want you to allow yourself some grace. Most of us are going to come out of the interview wishing we had used a different example, added this to that question, or you'll have a pile of, I should have done this, I should have done that. I'd like you to take a cue from Elsa from Frozen and just let it go. All right, try to do better next time and allow yourself some grace. You probably did just fine. So that is it for today's 10-Minute Tuesday. I'd like to thank you for joining us this week for 10-Minute Tuesdays, where we take on career development in 10 minutes at a time or less. We will see you next week, and take good care out there.